Welcome to this week's webinar. Today, I'll be talking about compensation for crime victims. First, I just want to outline that the Office of Victim Services, also known as OVS, is the governing body that will help with compensation claim forms. On ovs.ny.gov, you would be able to locate three sections. Section 1 is Help for Crime Victims. Here it outlines a lot of frequently asked questions for victims, what they're entitled to, their rights, and how they can connect with services near them. Section 2 focuses on guidance for service providers. This includes information as well as training for service providers and how they can assist with filing claims on behalf of victims. It also gives a lot of helpful tips as well as frequently asked questions. Section 3 is actually the online compensation claim filing section. Now, a victim can choose to file a claim on their own. However, I would highly recommend that they consider working with a service provider to assist them through the process. And we'll talk about why as we move through. So right here is actually the claim application and instructions cover sheet that would be found on top of the actual claim. The claim is very lengthy, and it's really important to be sure to read all of the instructions before beginning to fill out the claim. Again, I would really consider working with a service provider that has experience in completing a claim. This is because they will already have knowledge on what to include, and they can assist you before you even meet with them on what documents to make sure you bring. Again, the claim can be very lengthy, and if you don't include all of the pieces when you first submit the claim, it'll really hold up receiving your award if they choose to accept the claim. If a claim is incomplete, that can lengthen the process. You may have the reviewer from the Office of Victim Services contact you to discuss missing information or missing documentation. Typically, from the time you submit a claim online, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to begin to hear something back. There is, however, emergency compensation claims that you can request, which could be up to $2,500 in awards. Those, however, can sometimes be more difficult to be approved for. The last thing that I want to mention is that you are able to watch the OVS Compensation Training Series on YouTube. The website is listed on this slide. However, you can also find that on the ovs.ny.gov webpage, there will be a direct link. And that will be under the section 3, the online filing. So who is eligible for compensation? Obviously, this is a victim of a crime, so an innocent victim of a crime. If during the review of a police report, OVS feels that you were not an innocent bystander and that you somehow contributed to the crime against you, they may deny your claim. So this is just something to be aware of. Other eligible parties are victims of crime who are physically injured. Victims of crime may not have to be physically injured if they are under the age of 18, 60 or over, or disabled. So they fall into the special populations category. Certain relatives and dependents who were primarily dependent on the victim for support. So this could be the children of a victim. It could be their spouse or significant other. It could also be elderly parents or grandparents who are dependent on the victim. Certain relatives, those who paid for or incurred burial costs for an innocent crime victim. So this would be in the event that the crime resulted in fatality of the victim. Child victims, a child who witnesses a crime, and the parents, step-parent, grandparent, guardian, brother, sister, stepbrother, or stepsister of the child victim. Certain victims of unlawful imprisonment or kidnapping, certain stalking victims, victims of terrorist attacks outside of the US who are resident of New York State, and also victims of frivolous lawsuits brought by a person who committed a crime against the victim. I know that's quite a bit to digest. If you have any questions about this, at the end of the slideshow, I will give you the phone number for OVS. It is also listed on that cover page, and I'll remind you of the website, which is ovs.ny.gov. You can also connect with a local service provider for any questions. So what other steps are necessary to be eligible? So the first thing that you have to do in order to be eligible to file this compensation claim is that you need to report the crime. You need to report the crime within 1 week to police or another criminal justice agency. One of the documents that will be required when you submit the crime is a report number. It is typically requested that you attach the report itself, so whether that is to law enforcement or it could possibly be a CPS report or something similar to that. Then you would also need to file the claim with OVS within 1 year of the crime. They understand that a lot of people aren't familiar with OVS and their compensation service, so they do give a year. If, however, you are late with either reporting the crime itself or filing the claim, you may still be able to submit a claim, but you're going to have to justify what caused that delay in writing. So perhaps that is that you moved, that you were hospitalized, that you were taking care of a victim who was hospitalized. It could be a variety of things, but you're going to want to have that in writing to justify. And then you're going to need to cooperate. So cooperating with the police, the district attorney's office, and OVS is imperative if you want to receive an award for your claim. The next thing to be aware of is what a compensation claim can actually cover. For the victim, a compensation claim may be able to cover medical and counseling expenses. Here at the CAC, our advocates, when they're meeting with a child and family, always discuss OVS as an option to them. The number one reason that we discuss OVS compensation claims with most of our clients isn't because they've necessarily had a physical injury that needs medical and covered payments for medical expenses. Really, what we're looking at is the counseling expenses. Even if a child chooses not to receive counseling immediately following an offense against them, they may choose or need counseling later on in life. An OVS claim can stay with that child for counseling expenses related directly to the crime. So say we have a young person who unfortunately has experienced sexual assault or sexual abuse, and at the time of the event and shortly there following, they don't want to receive counseling because they are kind of hoping to put that experience out of their mind and they're just not ready to talk about it. But as they become older, maybe they begin dating and having romantic relationships, and some things happen that are triggering to them and remind them of these experiences from their childhood. That might be a time where counseling expenses are covered through an OVS compensation claim because they're seeking counseling as a direct result of the crime that was committed against them, even if it was more than a year ago. Other things that a compensation claim can cover are the loss or damage of essential personal property. Some things that may be considered essential personal property would be um, clothing, eyeglasses, actual cash. Perhaps there was a domestic dispute and either doors or windows, specifically external on the property, were damaged, things of that nature. Other expenses may be burial or funeral expenses, lost wages or lost support, specifically if someone was hospitalized and missed work. This could also be because their child was hospitalized as the victim of a crime and the parents have lost wages from being with their children at the hospital. Transportation, occupational or vocational rehabilitation, the use of domestic violence shelters if they incur any kind of charges while staying there, crime scene cleanup, Good Samaritan property losses, and moving expenses. So I mentioned this a little earlier, what documentation is needed to file a claim. These are listed on the cover sheet in the first page of the claim. If you choose to work with a service provider, they'll also be sure to let you know what things that you should bring to your appointment to meet with them so that they can best assist you. They'll be able to make copies and attach them and upload them right to your online form. These things are going to include the police reports that were filed on behalf of the victim, any insurance cards for both the victim and if they're a minor, their parents as well. This is because OVS is considered the payer of last resort. That means that they will cover anything not covered under something else. So whether that's automobile insurance, homeowner's insurance, your medical insurance, or disability claims or workers' compensation. Everything will be ran through those first before OVS will pick up the remainder. You're going to want to include receipts of essential personal property. So in many cases, this compensation claim is going to reimburse you for replacement of things. So if your eyeglasses were broken and you went and purchased new ones, you would want to make sure that you keep that receipt. You also want to keep any receipts and documentation of counseling or medical bills that are accrued from the time of the incident until an OVS claim can be awarded. You're going to need the victim's birth certificate. If the crime ultimately resulted in a fatality, you're going to need the death certificate and funeral contract in order to receive reimbursement for funeral costs. Any and all itemized medical bills, and like I said, including counseling, letters for any insurers denying or authorizing payments for the services listed on this form. Again, this is due to OVS being the payer of last resort. You're going to want to include a additional proof of age, so whether that be a driver's license and or birth certificate. There will be some other ones that if you don't have access to a driver's license or don't have a driver's license, this provider can assist you with. And any legal guardianship papers. If you are not the victim's birth mother or father and you're completing this form on their behalf, you're going to need to include legal guardianship papers. So for step parents, if they don't have actual custody or guardianship of the child, then they really can't sign the claim on their behalf. They would need to have whoever the guardian is sign. And just a few additional things to keep in mind. I'm going to stress this one more time, that working with a service provider can be extremely beneficial. Not only can they assist you with filing the claim and making sure that the claim is filed in its entirety, they can also work with you in the weeks following the claim. If there are missing documentation or missing pieces, you can set it up so that they receive notification as well, and they can assist you with updating or adding those documents later. HIPAA forms for each healthcare provider will be needed. So if you have a treatment for a victim at a hospital, and then they're seen for follow-up with either their primary doctor or a specialist or a surgeon, you're going to want to make sure that you sign a HIPAA release form and authorization for each one of those people. The victim must sign the form themselves unless they are under the age of 18, in which case a parent or legal guardian must sign the form and include proof of relationship. Incomplete applications will lengthen the process. So remember I said it usually will take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, possibly longer, for a determination to be made. This is because once you submit the form, it has to wait to be processed and then reviewed. If there's an incomplete application, you will receive notification from the reviewer at OVS on what is needed for them to be able to determine your qualification for a claim. If you do not respond or submit the requested paperwork, after about 30 days, the case will be closed and the claim will be denied. And OVS will always issue a determination in writing. They may approve, deny, or partially award funds for claims. And once you receive that claim, if you disagree with their decision, you have 30 days to appeal that decision. And those appeals must be made in writing as well. Before I go, I just want to make sure that you have that website again, as well as the phone number to contact the Office of Victim Services. That website is www.ovs.ny.gov. And their phone number is 1-800-247-8035. If you have any additional questions or are looking for a service provider near you and are unable to locate one, you can certainly feel free to email me, Sara Flack, the Education Coordinator at the Child Advocacy Center of the Finger Lakes. My email address is Sara, S-A-R-A, @cacfingerlakes.org.